You are standing in a crowded terminal. The air is a stagnant cocktail of jet fuel, floor wax, and expensive duty-free gin. Then, it happens. A woman walks past, wearing a specific, sharp notes of lavender and sandalwood. In an instant, the terminal vanishes. The noise of the rolling suitcases dies away. You are 6 years old again. You are sitting in your grandmother's hallway, the sunlight hitting the carpet at a specific angle, the weight of a heavy wooden door in your hand. You haven't thought about that hallway in 25 years. You didn't ask to go there. You didn't search your brain for the file. The file found you. It didn't just present a memory. It forced you to relive the emotion of that moment with a terrifying, surgical precision. This is the Proustian phenomenon. It is the most direct, unmediated connection between the external world and your internal identity. In the hierarchy of human perception, every other sense is a filtered suggestion. Smell is a command. Why does a single molecule have the power to hijack your entire consciousness? To understand this, we have to look at the architecture of the human brain not as a masterpiece of design, but as a series of historical compromises. Most of our sensory input follows a strict, bureaucratic protocol. When you see a goal scored in a stadium or hear the roar of the crowd, that data is processed through a central clearinghouse. This is the thalamus. Think of the thalamus as the ultimate gatekeeper, the CEO of your sensory department. It receives the signals from your eyes and ears, filters out the noise, and decides what is important enough to send to the higher processing centers of the cortex. It is a system of checks and balances. It ensures that you aren't overwhelmed by every flicker of light or hum of an air conditioner. It provides a buffer between the world and your reaction. But smell is the outlier. Smell is the rogue agent that refuses to play by the rules of the institution. When an odorant molecule enters your nose, it doesn't wait for an audience with the thalamus. It bypasses the gatekeeper entirely. It has a direct, hardwired connection to the most primitive, emotional parts of your brain. This is the inside view of a biological monopoly. While sight and sound are being debated in the boardroom of the thalamus, smell has already broken into the archives and the panic room. It is a structural anomaly that changes everything about how we experience our own past. The journey of a scent begins at the olfactory epithelium. This is a small patch of tissue tucked high inside the nasal cavity. It is home to millions of olfactory sensory neurons. These are unique in the human body. They are the only neurons that are directly exposed to the external environment. Your brain, usually protected by the thick armor of the skull and the blood-brain barrier, essentially sticks its fingers out into the wind to feel the chemical makeup of the world. Each of these neurons is tipped with receptors that bind to specific molecules, like a key into a lock. When a molecule of lavender binds to a receptor, it triggers an electrical impulse. This impulse travels up the olfactory nerve, through a bone called the cribriform plate, and into the olfactory bulb. This is the brain's first processing station for smell. But here is where the institutional corruption of the brain becomes clear. The olfactory bulb is physically nestled right next to two critical structures, the amygdala and the hippocampus. The amygdala is the brain's emotional processing center. It handles fear, pleasure, and the fight or flight response. The hippocampus is the librarian. It is responsible for the formation of long-term memories and spatial navigation. Because of this geographical proximity, the signal from a smell reaches these emotional and memory centers in a fraction of a second, without any filtering from the conscious mind. This is why a smell doesn't just remind you of a person, it makes you the way that person made you feel. It is a direct injection of data into the limbic system. In the world of neural architecture, this is the equivalent of a secret tunnel, leading from the street directly into the vault. No other sense has this level of clearance. No other sense can bypass the logical centers of the brain so completely. This wasn't a series of accidental connections. It was exactly how the survival system was designed to work. To understand why this bypass exists, we have to look at the evolutionary contract signed by our ancestors millions of years ago. Long before we had the luxury of sight-based navigation or complex language, we had the chemical sense. In the primordial ocean, the ability to detect chemicals in the water, to move toward food and away from toxins, was the difference between life and death. The smell brain, or the rhinencephalon, was the original brain. It was the foundation upon which the rest of our neural complexity was built. For a primitive mammal, a smell was a high-stakes data point. If you smelled a predator, you didn't have time to process the image, categorize the species, and weigh your options. You needed an instant, visceral emotional response: fear. If you smelled a mate or a food source, you needed an instant drive: desire. The system was built for speed and emotional impact. Evolution didn't care about your nostalgia. It cared about your survival. The reason smell is so tightly coupled with memory is that for most of our history, remembering a smell was a life-saving skill. If you survived an encounter with a toxic plant, your brain needed to ensure that the next time you encountered that scent, the memory was so vivid and the emotional aversion so strong that you wouldn't make the same mistake twice. This is the institutional memory of the species. We carry within us a sensory map that is millions of years old. But as we moved into the modern era, the old guard of the olfactory system didn't retire. It simply found new things to obsess over. The problem is that the modern world is a sensory minefield. We are no longer dodging predators in the tall grass. We are navigating a landscape of artificial scents, processed foods, and synthetic environments. Yet, the hardware remains the same. The bypass is still open, and because the bypass is open, it can be exploited. This leads us to the scent industrial complex. Corporations and governing bodies have long understood that the quickest way to a consumer's loyalty is through the nose. They know that you can close your eyes and cover your ears, but you cannot stop breathing. When you walk into a high-end hotel, you aren't just smelling cleanliness. You are smelling a custom-engineered ambient scent designed to trigger a specific emotional response: safety, luxury, and belonging. This is scent branding. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry that operates entirely below the level of your conscious awareness. They are using the brain's inside view against you. By pumping a specific fragrance through the HAT system of a stadium or a shopping mall, they are creating a permanent, emotional anchor in your hippocampus. Years later, when you encounter that scent in a different context, you will feel a sudden, inexplicable warmth toward that brand. You won't know why. You'll think it's a personal preference. In reality, it's a biological hack. They have bypassed your CEO, the thalamus, and written their data directly into your archive, the hippocampus. It is a form of institutional interference that we are virtually powerless to resist. But there is a deeper, more personal tragedy in this mechanism. Because the connection between smell and memory is so direct, it is also incredibly fragile. Unlike a photograph or a written journal, an olfactory memory cannot be revisited at will. You can look at a picture of your childhood home 1,000 times until the image becomes mundane, but you cannot summon the smell of that home. You have to wait for the world to give it to you. This makes olfactory memories the most authentic experiences we have, but also the most elusive. They are ghosts that only appear when they choose. Research from institutions like Rockefeller University has shown that humans can distinguish upwards of 1 trillion different odors. Our capacity for scent-based data is astronomical, yet our vocabulary for it is pathetic. We usually describe smells by what they represent. It smells like a rose, or it smells like a locker room. We lack the abstract language for scent that we have for color or sound. This linguistic poverty further isolates the olfactory experience. It remains a private, internal event that cannot be fully shared. It is a secret conversation between the world and your amygdala. When we look at the broken promises of the other senses, the power of smell becomes even more apparent. Vision is often deceptive. We see what we expect to see. Our brains fill in the gaps and smooth over the contradictions. Hearing is filtered by our attention. We can tune out a conversation or a constant drone. But smell is honest. It is a chemical reality. If the molecule is there, the receptor fires. If the receptor fires, the memory awakens. There is no optical illusion for the nose. There is only the truth of the encounter. This brings us to the most devastating aspect of the inside view. As we age, the olfactory system is often the first to show signs of institutional decay. A loss of the sense of smell, or anosmia, is frequently one of the earliest clinical markers for neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. When the secret tunnel to the hippocampus begins to collapse, the memories it once guarded begin to fade. It is as if the library is still there, but the doors have been welded shut. The loss of smell isn't just a loss of flavor or fragrance. It is a loss of emotional tethering to one's own history. Consider the implications of a world where we are increasingly disconnected from natural scents. We live in sterilized boxes. We mask our natural odors with chemicals. We are effectively silencing the most powerful communication channel we possess. In our drive for cleanliness and order, we are inadvertently dampening our emotional depth. We are trading the raw, unmediated power of the olfactory bypass for a curated, filtered, and ultimately thinner experience of reality. The governing bodies of our modern lives, the architects, the urban planners, the product designers, have prioritized the visual and the auditory because they are easier to control, they are easier to monetize. But the old guard in our brains is still waiting. It is still hungry for the chemical complexity of the real world. Every time you catch a whiff of wood smoke on a winter evening or the metallic tang of a coming storm, your brain is briefly reconnected to its ancient roots. For those few seconds, the hierarchy of the modern mind is overturned. The primitive is back in charge. This wasn't a series of isolated mistakes. It was exactly how the system was designed to work. The brain didn't evolve to give us a high-definition, objective view of the universe. It evolved to keep us alive in a world that was trying to kill us. The direct line from the nose to the heart was a necessary shortcut. It was a security feature that became a poetic bug. It is the reason why a single, microscopic particle can carry the weight of a decade. It is why a person can be gone for 20 years, yet return in full vividness because of a specific brand of detergent. We are, in many ways, at the mercy of our nostrils. We walk through the world thinking we are in control, thinking we are making logical decisions based on the data we see and hear. But beneath the surface, in the dark, damp corridors of the limbic system, the inside view is telling a different story. It is a story of ancient fears, forgotten loves, and the inescapable pull of the past. We are not just observers of our lives, we are chemical recorders. And the tapes are always running, even when we think we've stopped listening. The next time a scent stops you in your tracks, don't fight it. Don't try to analyze it with your logical cortex. Let the bypass work. Let the signal travel the secret path to the amygdala. For that one moment, the bureaucracy of your conscious mind has been suspended. You are experiencing the closest thing to time travel that our biology allows. You are seeing the inside view of your own soul, written in the language of molecules and neurons. It is a fragile, fleeting, and terrifyingly powerful gift. The terminal is still loud. The woman with the lavender perfume has moved on toward gate B42. But you are still standing there, feeling the weight of that heavy wooden door in your grandmother's hallway. The sun is still hitting the carpet at that specific angle. The memory isn't a thought, it's a physical presence. It is a ghost that has been summoned by a chemical key. You take a breath. The jet fuel and the floor wax return. The hallway vanishes. You are back in the present, a passenger in a system you only partially understand. The brain is a fortress, with a single wide-open door. We spend our lives trying to guard the gates, unaware that the most important visitors have already slipped in through the back. They are waiting in the archives, silent and invisible, until the right molecule arrives to wake them up. We are the sum of what we have smelled, and we will never truly know the depth of that library until the wind blows in the right direction. In the end, we are left with a quiet observation of our own limits. We can map the genome, we can photograph distant galaxies, and we can build machines that think. But we cannot explain why a specific, dusty smell in an old book can make us mourn a life we haven't lived in years. We are high-tech beings run by a low-tech engine. We are governed by a chemical ghost that refuses to be silenced. And perhaps that is the only thing keeping us human in a world that is increasingly synthetic. Can we ever truly trust a memory that we can't summon on our own?